everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Anthony Davis wants to play the four some more. We've heard it before. It's a very rhymey opening. It's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh, it's a shame. We'll tell you what's in store. It was sitting right there for me, and I didn't hit it. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. What does we do? So I always say it's Locked On Lakers. It's never behind a paywall. You can find us on YouTube. I just could have thrown in one more rhyme, Andy, and I'm all thrown off now. Over 20,000 subscribers strong, that YouTube channel. Love the support we're getting there. Got a lot of reaction on Friday's episode regarding Jared Vanderbilt and the possibility of an extension for him. The Lakers, he is extension eligible. Nobody expected them to just hand him one last week, but it creates an interesting conversation, and you guys had a ton of reaction on the YouTube page, which we will get to before the end of the show. Want to talk a little bit about Austin Reeves and the end of his Team USA World Cup experience, which ended over the weekend with a loss to Canada in the bronze medal game. No medals, Andy, for the U.S. in the World Cup. But let's start here. Anthony Davis. He'd like to play the four some more. He doesn't like to play 99.9% of his minutes at the five last year. Didn't like that, apparently. He wants to move back to the four, at least more.
Yeah, and this, as you mentioned, we've heard this many times since Anthony Davis became a Laker, including during his introductory press conference with Frank Vogel, when it was acknowledged that he wanted to play more at the four if possible. And with Christian Wood joining the team, Dave McMenamin of ESPN, friend of the show, had in a piece about Wood's arrival that this could be at least tangentially connected to trying to give Anthony Davis more opportunities at the four. Quote, sources told ESPN that Davis made it clear to the organization he wanted to have more support at center so he wouldn't have to play so much five during the regular season. Davis was slotted at center 99% of his minutes last season, according to Clean Glass data, while Davis's performance in the middle earned him a 3-year, $186 million contract extension this summer. The Lakers' strategy with Rob Pelinka in charge of basketball operations has been to partner with their stars as stakeholders in the process. Davis's desires to spend more time at power forward was heard. In addition to Wood, LA signed 7-footer Jackson Hayes. The key to me, a lot of that, Brian, I think is actually the phrase was heard, because I think a lot of this is about making sure Anthony Davis actually feels heard. And I want to make it clear, it's important that your superstars feel heard. I'm not talking about Anthony Davis like he's a 5-year-old that you're looking to humor, like you're the parent of a bratty child. Like, it is important that your superstars feel like their voice matters in decision-making when it comes to creating a roster. That being said, I think Wood's arrival does create that possibility. Do I think it's going to be anywhere close to what Anthony Davis would prefer in a somewhere between perfect and realistic world? No, not even close.
Well, I mean, I wonder what that number is. The good news is, as we, Dave noted in the story, as we noted, when you have played 99% of your minutes at one position, it's not easy. It's not hard to find more opportunities to shift that number some. And what I think this sets up the Lakers to do, because you're right, it is important to make sure your stars feel heard. It's also really important to make sure they don't feel like they're being ignored either. I mean, look, AD is signed up. They've got the extension. It's like he's not going anywhere. He's not going to complain his way out of LA. He's not going to sulk and pout and do all that stuff. Certainly not over this. But what I think it can do, and they were going to sign a center either way. They needed another one and all that. But I do think one of the reasons that Christian Wood was so appealing to them, beyond the obvious talent with all the red flags, but the obvious talent, the obvious on paper fit with the two of them offensively, I think is a big perk. And what I think we're looking at here, and I don't know how many minutes this actually is going to be, but it wouldn't be that hard for the Lakers to structure a rotation that puts Wood next to Davis when LeBron doesn't play.
Absolutely.
And so, what exactly does that bump the minutes? Does it go to 80% of his minutes at center? I don't know. I don't know exactly what that looks like, how many minutes you can construct with the two of them. But definitionally, the two of them are going to play at least 25 minutes together every night.
Right. And definitionally, I think as long as the two of them play minutes together, Anthony Davis has to play center because him at the 4 with LeBron at the 3 on a regular basis. I want to make it clear because in our last show, I had some people pushing up against my contention that LeBron can't play the 3 defensively. Like, did you not watch the playoffs? He guarded Andrew Wiggins. Like, I am aware that on a contextual basis, yes, LeBron can guard a small forward. Like most players in the league on isolated possessions can guard anybody in the league in an isolated sense. On a regular basis, I stand by my contention that LeBron as your everyday defender at the 3 spot
You don't want to do
is an awful idea.
And I think the Lakers are aware of that. The reporting that's come out, whether that's Jovan or whether that's Dave, part of the big reason Wood is not expected to start is to avoid that problem. So, could you do it for 3 minutes a night? Okay, sure. Could you do it for 20, 30? No. And so when you add up the minutes where you can play Wood and Davis next to each other and LeBron isn't on the floor and 3 minutes a game for, where is that, if that's 10 minutes a night or 8 minutes a night or 9 minutes a night, that bumps that 99% down to 80 something percent, 70. It's enough of a tangible difference that I think the Lakers, can do. And part of the reason the Lakers did it the way they did it last year is because there weren't a lot of ways to do it any other way. They really did lack some of the depth up front, to make some of those combinations work. And they had to, their best players were all shorter than Anthony Davis. And they needed to get, if you want to get those guys on the floor. This year, they have a little bit less of that problem. They can engineer more minutes where, you have a credible small forward on the floor. You can play Taurean Prince with, AD, and I'm just putting a name out there, but, with AD and Wood, or, slide Rui down. Like there are ways to do it. It's still not going to be the thing they do in their high leverage minutes.
No, and it's also not going to be the thing they do on a regular basis because, again, as long as LeBron and Anthony Davis play as many minutes together as we expect, and they should,
on account of them being really good.
Right. You can't play AD at the 4 in that scenario. I hope this is something Anthony Davis realizes because, it's very clear that what he would want in a perfect world is not happening on even a remotely, regular basis. And to some degree, to quote Don Draper, that's what the money's for.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope AD can recognize that at this point, it's really not about him. It's really more about LeBron.
Yeah. Just for reference, he played 91% of his minutes at power forward when they in the 1920 season.
Right.
Since then, it's gone 76% at center and 99% at center.
Right. And I mean, some of this has been about, the construction of the roster around them. But I really do think a lot of that increase, especially where we are now, is much more about LeBron than AD. And that's just it is good that the Lakers are looking to try to find ways to steal even some minutes for AD at the 4 spot, just so they can say that they're doing it.
Right. And it's also too, that could be enough of a tangible difference to him to feel like, okay, I'm not doing it as much. Like for whatever his reasons are, whether it's physical wear and tear, whatever it is, 15% less is a tangible difference.
Sure.
It's hard to make it higher than that.
Right.
15, 20%, whatever that number is.
Yeah. And I would just, whether you're a Laker fan or whether you're Anthony Davis, I would prepare for the idea that it's not really going to be more than that.
Austin Reeves and Team USA, clunky finish to that tournament, Andy. They lose to Germany, they lose to Canada, and people were a little upset. Do you care? That's next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Ibotta, and if you're picking up some burgers or hot dogs for an NFL barbecue, why not get some cash back for it with Ibotta? School's back in session. The kids want to be fashionable in the hallways. You can watch your cash back grow like their wardrobe with Ibotta. You're already spending the money, so why not get some cash back for your troubles with Ibotta? So either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after your shopping, and you get your cash back. It's that simple. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year in real cash back, real cash. It's not like points. Let's be honest, nobody ever uses them. Half the people can't even figure out how to do the points, and it's always complicated. It's a hassle. You don't want that. You want real cash back, particularly with hundreds of online brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, and use that code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use that code LOCKED.
Quick side note, somebody left on the YouTube page a comment that I would be 100% more attractive, 100% better looking if I switched glasses. I do have another pair of frames that I sometimes wear, but I would also appreciate a hint as to what shape, because I have a new prescription and I am going to get new frames. So you, person who thinks I could be 2x more attractive, twice as good looking as I already am, 2x this, Andy, a little guidance would be helpful, because there is a world of frames out there. And so, yeah, thank you for the comment, but please, more information. Anyway, the U.S. loses to Canada over the weekend in the bronze medal game, the consolation game, I suppose, in the World Cup. This after losing to eventual world champion Germany in the semifinals,
featuring FIBA MVP Dennis Schroeder.
Dennis Schroeder, that's right.
Yeah.
Reeves took a lot of criticism, I guess, for his defense, I guess, over the course of the tournament. I will admit I watched none of this. Beyond the games being on at really inconvenient times, we live in LA. There's a carriage argument right now between ESPN and Spectrum. That's where we get our cable, and without passing judgment on either side, I can't watch these games. I have no access to them right now. So I just going by Twitter, though, Andy, Reeves was getting a little criticized. He certainly put up big numbers against Canada. And while, we guess he got beat up in the post again against Germany, that's in part because, once again, Jaren Jackson Jr., who's actually supposed to be down there, was on the bench with foul trouble. So overall, any concerns about like this defensive issue with the World Cup? Somehow people found something that exposes Reeves that might carry over into the regular season?
I mean, I think it's quite possible that if you put Austin Reeves continually in the post to defend, he could get tossed around a lot, because he's a physical player in the way he goes about drawing fouls. He's a physical player in that, he'll put his nose in things, so to speak, but he's not the type of guy that gets by on strength as a defender.
Right.
Like he's not a physical defender in that sense. So if I thought the Lakers would be regularly deploying Reeves in the post as a defensive presence, yes, this would concern me, since I don't count on that happening. Obviously, you want to make sure Reeves continues to grow as a defensive presence and not simply a scorer and a distributor. But no, that particular aspect of it doesn't bother me.
No.
Especially since it doesn't seem like the defensive issues really stretched much beyond that.
Right. And I certainly saw some clips and saw some people who, when he was put on an island being attacked by quicker defenders and all that. That all happens in the NBA. Like we have seen this. for whatever differences between FIBA and the NBA game and all these other things, like people have tried to put Austin Reeves on an island. And sometimes it works because generally speaking in the NBA, there are very few guys who can cover, talented 2s and 3s one-on-one off the wing. Like that is not an easy thing to do. And there's a reason those guys score the way they do. But broadly speaking, all the defensive numbers, the metrics and all that stuff have indicated over the last couple of years that certainly, particularly as a team defender, Austin Reeves makes your defense better. He does not make it worse. And if teams want to tilt their offenses to either, I guess, try to put him in the post, which is just not how the NBA game really works, or to try to isolate and attack to attack Reeves that way, that's fine, because it more than likely means they're doing things that are probably outside their normal offense. And if for whatever reason Reeves have a tough matchup, the Lakers have 17 other people that they can put on the floor to try to create the right matchups and the right combinations. I am not worried about Austin Reeves defensively in the slightest going into this season.
I mean, first of all, if you're thinking about the potential starting lineup and where the weaknesses could be defensively, if teams decide that they would rather attack Austin Reeves as a focus of their offense and a strategy than, say, DAngelo Russell, I'm more than happy to have that be the thing the Lakers deal with, because Austin Reeves may not be prime Ron Artest, but he is a much better defender than D'Lo. And if it is decided because of FIBA that you'd rather attack Reeves and essentially let DAngelo Russell off the hook, I feel like in the aggregate the Lakers are being done a hell of a lot of favors.
I think that's true. Do you care? Like I am of the belief that, look, the U.S. is, I still think, capable of putting the best team together to play like this whole world championship argument that the sprinter created. The NBA champion's not the world champion. It's not a world tournament, whatever. It's like, no, like it is. It's like all the best players play here. This is where the Denver Nuggets were the best team on earth last year. And I think if they played a tournament, that would show. I mean, obviously, I don't know.
They also have two international players. Their top
right.
two players are not from not from the United States.
Exactly. And so, I don't care, but I also don't care when the US loses. It doesn't bother me because I see it as a sign of the strength of the game of basketball, that it has become so international that, Team Canada, all 5 players on Team Canada, the starting lineup, were NBA players, and 2 of them are pretty good. And, whenever you think of Dylan Brooks, and all that, it's like, these are real players and real teams and all that.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is one of the best players in the world. Period.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
And so, like, I just don't, like, my national pride is not at all tied up in whether or not the U.S. wins international basketball tournaments. That's true. I prefer it. Like, I cheer for the U.S. when they play, but like, are they going to win in the Olympics next year? I don't know. If they do, great. If they don't, I don't particularly care. And so perhaps maybe I'm just not as emotionally attached to like these wins and losses and whatever. But all I really care about from the context of our job is, did anybody get hurt that matters for my teams or my leagues? And if the answer is no, then most of what happens in international basketball to me doesn't really apply once people get back in the NBA.
Well, I would care if Reeves had performed bad for Team USA.
That's true.
Like that would actually be alarming, might be too strong, but it would certainly be disappointing. And if nothing else, it might prompt you to, reevaluate your expectations for Austin Reeves, his level of,
because you and I both said when he was put on that team that we expected him to play. We expect him to play a lot, and we expect him to play well. So I guess you're right. If he had fallen well short of that bar, it would have been like, and
for what it's worth, in both the game that they lost Lithuania that they lost to that led them having
That was the first game of Austin Reeves postgate.
Right. The game that they lost to Germany and then this game against Canada, for what it's worth, the general consensus is, Reeves' defensive issues in the post notwithstanding, he played pretty well in both those games. He scored very efficiently in both those games. He certainly played a lot of minutes and had Steve Kerr's trust down the stretch in both of those games. I think the overall experience for Reeves and Team USA was very positive, and at the very least, he looked like he belonged. Now, do I expect Austin Reeves to make the big boy Olympic team? Depending on who else takes part, no, not likely. I don't expect him to. Is it out of the question? No, but if I had to bet on it, he probably won't. But what was important to me was that Reeves had a positive experience here, and he didn't look like a guy that was selected over his head as some type of like flavor of the month reaction, like an overreaction. And that wasn't the case.
Did we undervalue Jared Vanderbilt on Friday's show? Many people on the comments page, comment section of the YouTube page thought so. We'll talk about it next. So I would say we didn't take a poll on this, Andy, but when you look back at the numbers or sort of the comments, basically, like, and kind of do the math in your head, I think the overwhelming feeling was it would be great if the Lakers re-signed Vanderbilt, and people wanted extended, like, give him an extension and keep him around for a while. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that's true. The big thing I think people were quibbling about and maybe asking of us was the number. You and I were both somewhere like, in that $8 to $10 million range. If you can do it, 4 and 40, 3 and 36, that is a good and solid deal. But there were a lot of people who think he's worth more than that, 12, 13, 14, something maybe even approaching the Rui contract. Looking back on it, especially with the cap going up, right? Do you think we missed anything here? Because I still think Vanderbilt at $17 million becomes a player that is much more likely to disappoint you, or at $15 million than if he's slotted more appropriately at 7, 8, 9.
Yeah. I mean,
10,
look,
I think,
in a perfect world, I don't, give Jared Vanderbilt all the money. It's not my money. And he seems like a really hardworking guy. So I have no problem with him getting as much as the Lakers or any team are willing to pay him.
Sure.
And, for what it's worth.
The question is whether or not I, as hypothetical GM, would be the one who gave him the money.
Right. I think once you start getting beyond $9-ish million, some of the things that Jared Vanderbilt doesn't do will start standing out to, teams and coaches, and then by extension fans, than the things that he does really well. He's a really versatile perimeter defender who gives you a ton of different options and a ton of different looks. It's part of the reason why I would really like to see him start, even if it's just like a 15 to 18 minute starting role. I think it gives the first five a lot of different defensive options. It can take some of the pressure off either Austin Reeves or LeBron to have to take on some of the toughest either point guard or perimeter assignments. He's a very good rebounder. He plays really, really hard. He's got occasionally some good, ball handling and passing skills that he busts out. And I like a lot of what he brings to the table, but the offensive limitations and the fact that once you get to him guarding 4s or 5s, I think he starts becoming dramatically less effective just because he's a pretty slight guy. I think a lot of those things will start jumping out at you the more he's getting paid. Part of the reason he seems like such an incredible boon for the Lakers is because he's making $4.5 million, and $4.5 million is a bargain. I mean, like it may not be Christian Wood at the veterans minimum, but it's pretty damn close. Like Jared Vanderbilt is an absolute steal at $4.5 million. I think if you doubled that salary and paid him $9 million annually, you'd still feel pretty good about it. It still could be a tradable contract if you were looking to package him. I think there's still a lot of value there. And, I've said I would love to see him get an extension. I maintain that I think he could be a viable starting option. I think a lot of the issues that came up with him during the playoffs were as much, if not more, about other guys not doing their job offensively than Jared Vanderbilt truly being the problem. But nonetheless, I think
no, right. But I mean, it's one of those things where he is a guy, and
I think he brings a lot of utility, is my point.
He does, but when he's also needs to be used in specific ways. When we go back and we talked to the folks in Minnesota, and we talked about it with the Utah guys when he got here, and I think when you start going into the numbers, this gets borne out. It really matters how you use him. Like, it really matters to get the most out of him. Not in a way he will always try. And that actually matters. Like, effort and energy is a skill for 82 games over the course of a season. But in terms of the actual return that you're getting, in terms of, is the team always better when Jared Vanderbilt plays? Are you getting like it? The answer is always he tries hard, but the results aren't what you think they are, because you watch him play and you think, based on just the eye test, that it's really positive and really because there's so much energy behind it. But oftentimes the actual analytics and the results aren't what you think what you want them to be, I think, a lot of times. And so that changes drastically depending on how he's deployed, especially defensively. And so, you have to put yourself in a position all the time where you have a roster that accommodates the ability to use him effectively and used him most effectively. That is less important when he's making $4.5 million, because if you can't work him in there, and the Lakers could have, like we talked about on Friday, there is no glide path to 20 minutes a night for Vanderbilt while everybody's healthy.
Absolutely not.
And when you lay out the full rotation, if certain things break a certain way, he might not have a spot where he plays.
It's part of the reason.
At all.
It's part of the reason that I would like to see him start.
Exactly.
Because I think if he doesn't start, when you look at the guys that are likely to come off the bench and the floor combinations that come from that, and knowing that LeBron and Anthony Davis are still going to end up playing some minutes with the bench guys, I think Vanderbilt is much more likely to get minutes if he starts than if he doesn't start. I'm not sure, given who else is slated to play, that there's actually a spot for him. We'll see, but especially considering, Christian Wood to me is not an option to start. Taurean Prince, I suppose, could be a live option, but I picture him more as somebody likely to come off the bench. I think Max Christie, if he's as ready as expected, he's going to be getting minutes. Like, you start running out of places to put Vanderbilt. Right. Vanderbilt, though, I think fills a very specific need in the starting unit, covering some of those defensive assignments. And he's going to be with four of the best offensive options on this team.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Cover up a lot of other things. Good comment, though, from Thomas Kalapuna 9604 in the YouTube section. If Phil Handy says Vando's been doing all the things he was rumored to have done this offseason, then God, yes, they should extend him. If he doesn't, he's improved as much as the workouts suggest, he will cost a ton more after the season. Then Laker Life 9817 chimed in this. If you see his work ethic and IQ to improve him, sign him on the cheap. That's actually an interesting way of looking at it.
Except here's my counter to that is, do we not think Jared Vanderbilt was working hard last offseason?
No, but you see the work actually paying off.
Maybe it is. Maybe I think I've never heard anybody, and this isn't a dig on Phil Handy or the dig on the people who are in, never heard anybody talk about summer workouts in which a guy's working really hard, and man alive, they're not making any progress whatsoever.
No, but they would, regardless of what's getting floated, they're actually going to know.
I am not. Okay. But the work is there. He's putting.
I'm not talking about what's getting leaked. I don't care about that.
But right. But I mean, okay. But what's getting leaked is the work is doing. He's looking good. That's what's being leaked. If the Lakers think that, I guess he's going to turn himself into a $25 million player in this season, okay, that's fine. Just extend him to whatever. I just this.
I think if they think he's going to turn into a $13 million player, try to get him at 8 or 9.
Okay, that's if he'll do that. I
Right.
think
But you
if they could
should
get him at
try.
8 or I think if they could, maybe they are, but I think if they could get him at 8 or 9, that's that's probably 8 or 9 or 10. That's probably what they're looking at anyway. But like this person here suggested, Anthony Lee 4615 extend Vanderbilt now 4 years with a player option 64 million.
No,
that's insane.
right.
But
there's space in between.
There is space in between. But just to finish the point I was making, like if Vanderbilt is, even if he's improved, but is still in that sort of, really good at what he's good at and has holes that make him problematic in certain situations, like that is a bigger deal at 14 million than it is at 6 or 7, because you start to, if you have a guy that you have to, that may not be playable in certain situations, or that you have to tailor your rest of your roster around to make. It's easy to do that with a guy who's making a little bit of money. It's harder to do that with a guy who's making more, because you have fewer options to make those other roster moves. So I would just be careful with him. I think he's a really interesting example of this, because everything about him as a player and a person is kind of what you want: effort, energy, team focus, all of that stuff. And that has value, and you can pay a few extra million for that. I don't have a problem with it. But, you still have to be careful, because you can't allow those things to cloud the vision of what's actually happening on the floor.
Sure.
And hopefully what's actually happening on the floor this year, he gets a chance to play, and B, shows that it's like really good. And like, okay, all these leaked reports or whatever are that, he's transforming himself and the corner three is there and all that stuff. I think you got to see it though in real games first. All right. So yeah, let us know if you think we're wrong. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show, hang out with over 20,000 subscribers. And again, remind me of what kind of glasses frames I should be wearing to make myself twice as handsome as I already am, which is pretty darn handsome. We will see everybody tomorrow.